Well, I really do appreciate your help with this, the sheriff said. The mayor's been cutting budgets left and right these days, and I just didn't have the manpower or money to catch the little thieves myself. Or make sure that the security guard was off duty so we didn't have to mess with his brain, Sabrina grumbled. Sheriff, the grooms are always at your disposal, Granny Rhoda said, ignoring Sabrina. I appreciate that, Rhoda, and I wish I could give you the credit for the arrest. But if me and Charlie found out we'd been working together, my backside would be one of those footballs in Geppetto's store, Hampstead said. It's our little secret, Granny Rhoda said with a wink. How was Candace? Granny shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Both Sabrina and Daphne watched her closely, wondering what their grandmother would say. He's doing just fine, the old woman replied, forcing a smile. Sabrina couldn't believe what she had just heard. In the short time they had known the old woman, Granny Rhoda had never told a lie. Mr. Canis was not fine by a long shot. 3 weeks earlier, Granny's constant companion and houseguest, Mr. Canis, had transformed into the savage creature known as the Big Bad Wolf. Since then, no one had seen him. He had locked himself inside his bedroom where he fought to put back his real-life inner demon. Every night, Sabrina and Daphne had heard the old man's painful moans and labored breathing. They would be woken by one of his horrible cries or the sound of him slamming against the wall. Mr. Cass was far from fine. That's good to hear, Hempstead said, but even from the back seat, Sabrina could spot the look of doubt on his face. I want my phone call, a little voice cried from the glove compartment. We were framed. The sheriff banged heavily on the dashboard. Tell it to the judge. Soon, Sheriff Hempstead pulled his squad car into the driveway of the family's quaint two-story yellow house. It was very late and all the lights were off. Sabrina opened her door and Elvis lumbered out, still wearing 2 Lilliputian 3 glue traps on his giant behind. It was bitterly cold, and Sabrina hoped the 2 adults wouldn't blabber on. Granny could talk a person's ear off, but the sheriff just thanked them again and excused himself, claiming he had paperwork piling up back at the station. At the front door, Granny took a giant keyring out of her handbag and went to work unlocking the many locks. Once Sabrina had believed Granny Rhoda was just a paranoid shut-in. In the last 3 weeks, she had seen things that she would never have dreamed possible, and now understood why the house was locked so tightly. Granny Rhoda knocked on the door 3 times and announced to the house that the family was home, making the last magical lock slide back and the door swing open. After cookies and some vegetable oil swabbing for Elvis, Granny Rhoda said, "Get cleaned up and hurry to bed. You've got school tomorrow. I've kept you up too late as it is." "Actually, Granny," Sabrina replied, "I think I'm coming down or something. I'd hate to go to school and get everyone sick." Granny grinned. "Sabrina, it's been 3 weeks. If you two don't go to school tomorrow, they are going to put me in the jailhouse. Now, up to bed." Sabrina frowned, forced a cough to make the old woman feel guilty, and marched up the steps. Couldn't Granny see there were more important things to do than go to school? Long after Daphne had drifted into a steady, snoring sleep, Sabrina crawled out of the 4-poster bed in the room that had once been their father's. His model airplanes still hung from the ceiling, and an old catcher's mitt rested on his desk. She knelt down on her hands and knees and pulled several dusty books and a key ring out from under the bed before climbing to her feet again and creeping silently into the hallway. Sabrina was very good at creeping. In fact, she'd have said she was an expert. A year and a half in and out of an orphanage and foster homes had taught her how to step lightly on hardwood floors and avoid creaky beams. In the past, she had used these skills to escape from one bad situation after another. In 18 months, the sisters Grimm had run away from more than a dozen foster families. Some of the families had used them as personal servants, while others expected them to be the punching bags for their own obnoxious children. These days, the girls didn't want to run away. Granny Rhoda had given them a home, but being sneaky still had its advantages, especially when Sabrina was doing something she knew her grandmother would disapprove of. When Sabrina reached the door at the top of the steps, she sorted through her own growing collection of keys and found a long brass skeleton key that fit it. Once it was unlocked, she took a quick look around to make sure no one was watching and stepped inside. The room was empty except for a full-length mirror that hung on the far wall. A single window allowed enough moonlight into the room for Sabrina to see by. She stepped up to the mirror and her reflection appeared. Her long blonde hair and blue eyes glowed a ghostly milky blue, but Sabrina wasn't here to admire herself. Instead, she did what most people would think was impossible. She walked directly into the glass and disappeared. The mirror was actually a doorway that led to an immense room Sabrina knew as the Hall of Wonders. In many ways, it reminded Sabrina of Grand Central Station in New York City, with its incredibly long, vaulted ceiling supported by towering marble columns. There were literally thousands of arched doors on either side of the hall. Each door was labeled with a little brass plate that revealed what was behind it: talking plants, giant living chess pieces, Babe the Blue Ox, and thousands more possibly interesting magical items and creatures, all collected by the grooms for safekeeping. Granny called it the world's biggest walk-in closet. Sabrina had started to see it as her only hope. She scanned the hall and spotted a lonely figure sitting in a high-backed chair several yards away. She headed in his direction. "Mirror," the girl said to the short, squat man, "I think I found something useful." Mirror, as he was called, was a balding man with deep angular features and thick, full lips who lived inside the mirror. His was the face that had proclaimed Snow White the fairest one of all to the wicked queen. When he spotted Sabrina, he set a celebrity magazine he had been reading down and got up from his chair. I thought you'd given this up," he said. "Granny's hands pretty busy," Sabrina explained. "So, let's get started." "What? No hello? No how are you? How's the family?" the little man complained. "Sorry, Mira, I don't have a lot of time." Apology accepted. "So, kiddo, what's on the agenda tonight?" "I found this thing in Burton's translation of the Arabian Nights," Sabrina said, opening one of her books and handing it to Mira. He didn't even bother to look at the page. "Listen, Blondie, I assure you, if we had Ginny's lamp, I'd have a lot more hair on my head, and we'd all be living in Hawaii. Sweetums, don't you think that if your grandmother had access to that kind of power, your parents would have already been found?" Sabrina frowned. She would spend the whole day researching ways to rescue her parents from their kidnappers, and every night Mira would shoot her ideas down one by one. "Fine," Sabrina replied, handing Mira another book she had opened already. "What about this?" Mira looked down at the book, flipped it to view its cover, and smiled. "L. Frank Baum, huh? Follow me, little cowpoke. I think we might just have that one in stock." The little man spun around and headed down the long hallway. The Golden Camp is one of the most interesting things the Wicked Witch ever owned. Yet most people are more fascinated by her broomstick, he continued. "I've been reading as much as I can," Sabrina replied, doing her best to keep up with Mira's quick pace. "Oh, I have no doubt about that," the little man said, spinning around on the girl. "So, you know how it works?" "Yes, I put it on and the monkeys come. They'll do whatever I want them to." "The only downside is the monkey smell," Mira said. "That's a stink that never quite goes away." After a short hike, Mira stopped at a door labeled Magical Hands and reached out his hand. Sabrina handed him her keyring. "You're building quite a collection," he said disapprovingly. "Does your grandmother know you've been swiping her keys and making copies?" Sabrina shook her head. "No." "Well, "You've got one for this door," he said. He opened the door and went inside. As Sabrina waited in the hall, she could see him rummaging through the room. He made quite a racket moving things around, knocking over a helmet in the process, which rolled across the floor with a clatter. Soon he returned with a gold-colored horn hat, which held a can of soda on each side. Tubes ran out of the cans and dangled below the chin strap. On the front of the hand, the words "Emerald City Green Socks" were printed in big green letters. Mira dusted it off and handed it to Sabrina. "This is the golden cap the Wicked Witch of the West used to summon the flying monkeys," she said in disbelief. "The witch was a huge sportsman," Miss Mira replied. "The magic instructions are inside." "You've got to be kidding me," Sabrina said as she read them. "Afraid not." The girl scowled and put the hat on her head. Following the ridiculous instructions, she lifted her right leg and began the crazy spell, "Epe Pepe Keke." Mira turned away and snickered. "Don't laugh, I feel stupid enough," Sabrina said, lowering her leg and lifting the other. "Hello, hello, hello." "I wish I had a camera," the little man giggled. "Zizzy, zizzy, zick," the girl said, now standing on both feet. Suddenly, her ears filled with the sound of 100 flapping wings. Monkeys materialized out of thin air. They gathered around the summoner, grinning and beating their black wings. Sabrina understood immediately why Mira had warned her about the monkey smell. They were a right bunch. She thought she might gag when one of the monkeys, wearing a beanie with a bright blue ball on top, took her hand and gave it a sloppy kiss. "What is your bidding, master?" it asked in a deep, unearthly voice. Sabrina hadn't gotten used to talking animals yet. They made her nervous. "Okay, Mr. Monkey, I need you to go fetch my parents," she commanded. The monkeys screamed and clapped their hands as if she had just promised them bananas. Their wings started to flap and they leaped into the air. But instead of disappearing as Sabrina expected, they zipped around the hall, flying in all directions, as if they weren't sure which way to go. The leader floated back down to the girl. He had a confused expression on his face. "What's wrong?" Sabrina asked. "Great magic blocks our path. Your wish cannot be granted," he said, and as quickly as he and the others had appeared, they were gone. "Why not?" Sabrina shouted angrily. She took the obnoxious magic hand off her head and shook it, but the monkeys did not return. Mira gave her a sad, pitying smile, but Sabrina couldn't bear to look at it. She was exhausted and angry, and not a single step closer to finding her parents. How many more dead ends could she come up against? She forced a smile and handed the golden cap back to Mira. The little man nodded and put it inside its room, shutting the door and locking it behind him. "Thanks anyway," she sighed as she took her keyring and silently walked away. She stepped through the portal without looking back and found herself alone again in the empty room. Crossing the floor, Sabrina suddenly stopped, turned, and looked at herself in the mirror's reflection. "Mirror," she called out softly. A blue mist filled the glass, and a little man's squat, muscular head peered out at her. "Want to take a look?" he asked. Sabrina nodded. He winked. "You know how it works." "Mirror, mirror, near and far, show me where my parents are," the girl said. Once again, the mirror's surface changed. As the little man's face disappeared, Sabrina's parents, Henry and Veronica Grimm, appeared instead. They were lying on a bed in the dark, fast asleep. Sabrina looked at her parents' faces and sighed. Her father had a round, warm face like her sister's, framed with blonde hair. Her mother, Veronica, was